How's it going, everybody? It's Carpo here. I wanted to talk for a minute about sympathy and ask the question, why should I give a shit what you feel like? Why should I care about your feelings? And not just me specifically, but why should any one of us care about how others feel? And many of you may have already gone through the philosophies on this before in your own life, but I just wanted to discuss it for a moment and explain why I think that we all need to have a little more sympathy. Without getting too wrapped up in the semantics of it, you know, feeling bad for someone else's situation is not exactly, it's not a rare thing. I think everybody feels sorry for someone to one degree or another. And a lot of the people who have sympathy for others, the people who are getting the sympathy don't want the sympathy. So sympathy is something that you generally don't want in many cases, but there are times when it sure helps to get a little bit, you know, when you're really suffering and hating yourself or hating your situation. But the thing is to not get so wrapped up in it that we become victims, because I think sympathy turns into victimhood. But this isn't about that. This is about sympathy itself and whether or not it's a universal trait. And obviously it's not. You know, sociopaths and psychopaths, if you want to get into that terminology, may have an issue with their empathy. And I'm not, whether it's genetic or learned is irrelevant. The fact is that some of the population just doesn't have the same sympathetic feelings towards others. It's an interesting concept, but not really that strange when you consider the fact that empathy and sympathy, I should say sympathy, is learned. And, you know, I've questioned this over the years. It's kind of like altruism, you know, and I've done videos about this, you know, a couple of years ago. I was talking about whether altruism is natural or, because you see animals helping other animals. You see animals helping animals from other, you know, completely other species of animals. And you like think, well, why? Why is this, you know? Sometimes it's a symbiotic relationship. But sometimes it just seems like you're helping someone with and endangering yourself. One of the things about altruism is people want to help others. If you wanted to help someone in your family, you're preserving your bloodline, and there's a lot of, you know, thought studies done on this to whether or not it would benefit you to help someone you didn't know. You know, well, is it helping the community, you know, as a whole by sacrificing yourself for someone else? If you sacrifice yourself for a child, which a majority of people will, without even thinking about it, you might think that that's just instinctual, that we just instinctually, you know, will save others. I think it's much more learned. I mean, I doubt if you were raised without values and without language that you see somebody drowning, you would run and save them. It's possible, but what I'm getting at is that sympathy seems to be a learned behavior, but some people are more prone to it. And before I made this video, I thought, well, you know, actually I learned a lot of my sympathy, you know, that I didn't always have sympathy. But then I started thinking back to my school, and I thought, you know, I remember in junior high, there was a couple of, you know, handicapped kids, what we called retarded kids back then, but now that's not PC. And I loved those retards. They were awesome. They were the coolest kids. I talked to them, I hung out with them, I spent time with them, and I was like one of the only people in the whole school that did. You know, when I met my wife years later, she said she was the same way, you know, at her school. And while people would pick on them, I would always defend them, and it's because I knew that they weren't able to defend themselves. And I've always cared about those less fortunate. But at the same time, I have a lot of sympathy for those less fortunate, but I also harbor just as much resentment for those who are menacing and abusive towards others. So, you know, you can't be passive about it, but you can't be overly aggressive. It's finding that happy medium. When it comes to altruism, I've even gone as far as to say, well, people do things for always a selfish reason. In other words, even when you're saving or you're helping someone else in your life, in their lives, you're doing it because either you might get something back from it, or because it simply makes you feel good, and feeling good releases chemicals. So if you're doing something that makes you feel good inside, then you're doing it also to help them, but for selfish reasons. I'm not saying you always are, but it's a question, it's a philosophy that I've you know, dug deeply into. What is altruism, and why do we help one another? But at a point, you realize it just doesn't matter. We have it. And it's a good thing to nurture. It's a good thing to teach our children. It's a good thing to learn. To remember to teach our kids to empathize and to sympathize with those around them, but to not get so wrapped up that they endanger themselves in the process. Because, or play the victim, because we have enough of that already. Everybody's a victim of the bullshit out there. So, hope y'all are doing well, and to keep this relatively short, and I'll talk to you soon.